Hello and welcome to the Citadel Group and Lean session about streamlining enterprise architecture practices. My name is Altena. I'm the former chief architect for the Department of Resources, and I'm currently working as a business advisor for Citadel Group in the enterprise architecture space. Let's get into it. So today we're going to talk about how we can streamline enterprise architecture practices for organizations in every single path of maturity. So we're going to take a deeper dive into the mechanics of enterprise architecture and talk about some common practices to keep your business solutions vital and relevant. Today we're going to be talking about just a little bit of background around enterprise architecture, a little bit about maturity, some streamlining and accelerating, so how you can help accelerate your organization into driving towards the continuous business transformation, which is number 4. And number 5, we're going to conclude and just have a little bit of a rerun on what we've all discussed, because we have 20 minutes and there's a lot of information to go through. There are many slides in this deck, and we're going to skip over a few. These slides will, however, be made available on the Citadel Group website for you to download. So first of all, we're going to start off with enterprise architecture. What is it? So enterprise architecture is basically a vehicle for understanding how the various pieces of business work together. So it's especially concerned with relationships and how everything works together and what actually makes and feeds and drives your organization. It is a practice that sits between business and technology, and it ensures that business can actually fulfill its goal and its vision into doing things such as strategic planning and decision making, making sure that problem solving can be done effectively as a company, not just technologically within certain silos, but making sure that whatever we solve affects the whole company. And we do have a really good view around change implementation. So make sure what is impacted when we do things, when we change things, when we move with the organization into a certain direction, because all enterprise architecture is that bridge between business and technology. So when you get started with enterprise architecture, you're going to need a framework. You're going to need something to help you organize all the technology and make sure that you have a useful underpinning to support your company in its journey. So normally what we do is we develop formal enterprise architecture to let you organize all that infrastructure, as I said. So make sure that we have a really good landscape and good view of what we have, what's in our tool bag. We need to make sure that we know what the interrelationships look like. So integrations, how do applications interact? How does technology connect? And how is the applications and software and all the digital information actually being processed and used by the organization? So how does it support your business processes? And we need to strategize around your business structure, right? So how do you leverage the opportunities that the business actually runs into, and how can we follow into that and actually streamline your operation? So how can technology help streamline your organization into being more effective, more efficient, and more cost effective? And although, every organization is different, they have different infrastructure and different components that will need to be considered. So in order to have a proper enterprise architecture framework, you're going to need things like a management team to oversee your business architecture, so all the moving parts stay aligned. Because, as I said, enterprise architecture is just an orchestration function. It just makes sure that we can follow whatever the senior leadership team wants to take the company. We need a methodology for carrying out strategic projects. So how do you run your whole project governance and structure? And how does the IT infrastructure actually support that? We need a system for documenting business planning and workflow and everything that's changing, because when business changes, your processes change and your workflows change. So we need to make sure that we can follow up on those changes and keep track. We need a dynamic collection of business rules, policies, and best practices. So those are guardrails. We need to make sure that whatever we do has a consistent and predictable outcome. And then we need a storehouse of tools to actually store all this stuff, like the process models, reference architectures, all this thing, right? So what we're building is basically a blueprint of your organization and a roadmap to actually help you implement whatever business is envisioning. And what you're going to need to do that is actually a lot of visualization and planning, because a picture tells 1,000 words, right? So you want to make sure that you have a really good visual representation of what your blueprint looks like. And the next step is maturity. Maturity is a big one. How are we going to implement enterprise architecture or use enterprise architecture practices when everybody's on a different scale of maturity? So let's talk about what a maturity could look like and what an uplift could look like. So maturity. Citadel Group and Linux, they have this this maturity scale, which is very useful to actually see where people need to get in and what they need to do from a practical perspective in order to raise their maturity to become a transformational company, because that's the ultimate goal. So some people use ad hoc, so that's level 1, right? You have huge efforts to answer simple questions. Information is distributed, it's hard to get any answers, it's a huge amount of effort to get anything done. And there's lots of failures, right? So when you start to make changes to your application or technology portfolio, things fall over because you don't know what you don't know. So then you get to level 2. So it's more about transparency, right? Understanding the as is as a single source of truth. So that's where you get a little bit of a repository, you get some Excel sheets going, or you get a Linux instance, and you start to understand how you can actually, what you actually have, what's in the tool bag. Then you have an automated one, so decreased data maintenance efforts. So that's where you start looking at, so how can I, elicit the help of the organization to actually get all the information into a centralized repository to help make those decisions, which takes you to level 4. So that's you use KPIs to contribute to business goals. It's just making sure that you can actually start making decisions and that you can actually be measuring those decisions, how successful they've actually been and what the impact could be from a risk perspective. And then that will eventually get you to level 5, which is transformational. So that's proactively drive the transformation of the business. That's where you're just, not being laid back or cruising. This is about making sure that your organization stays agile and stays on their feet to actually follow along with what the business is looking for. So now we know that. Let's talk about how we can streamline or accelerate anybody on that part of the journey to get to that level 5 as quickly as we can. So where can you jump in? So as an organization, you can be at level 1, and that's fine. So you're just starting out. So you want to focus on things like visibility. So you can focus on a principle that I've spoken about previously, which is a thing called minimum viable enterprise architecture. It's just we'll get into more detail on what it actually looks like, but it will help you build that blueprint. It will help you get that tool bag together and know what you have. It talks about capabilities, about application, about data, about integrations, about what kind of IT components do I have, and then building that landscape for you. It uses a centralized information store, and of course we recommend Linux, as a single source of truth for decision-making, problem solving, and changing. That's level 1. So what happens if you're a little bit more mature than that? Then you have that visibility. So jump straight in. Focus on principles. So some organizations, they want to use just-in-time architecture because they're on a critical path, on a critical journey. They have the velocity to actually have a lot of projects in flight. So instead of just, taking the time to actually build your landscape, you need to be on your feet and start making decisions quickly. So what you want to do is you want to focus on principles. So that will create a single pane of glass. It will align your organization. It will make decision-making a little easier because once you start making those decisions and those outcomes and deliverables are acceptable, you would actually turn these into reference architecture and standards. So you get predictable, consistent, and sustainable outcomes. And you can grow on that ladder, on that maturity really, really quickly to get to that level 5. Level 5 is, you have an EA practice, you've got all the previous things that I just mentioned sorted, and you really focus on a thing called continuous business transformation. And that's where you're using your maturity in decision-making and visibility and continuously adapt to changing market and customer requirements. So you're just completely following the business. So let's talk about what minimum viable enterprise structure is quickly. So as I said in the beginning, we're going to skip over some slides because we only have 20 minutes. So I'm not going to go through into too much detail, but I just quickly explained that minimum viable enterprise architecture is basically building that landscape and making sure that the information store that you're building is actually accurate and up to date, and that you have a model to actually make sure that you can support that. So once you have that landscape, you have an objective information store where you can make decisions and have a model, like a collaborative model. So you elicit the help of the company to actually keep your information up to date. So when people ask me, how many enterprise architects did you have in your team? And I said, well, probably 30. And people look really surprised, but that's basically because I'm really calling in the help of the organization to actually help and own the architecture and contribute to the information store. So that's MVEA. So it's just building that landscape, building your information store, making sure you can make decisions and you start planning. You can actually really start planning on data that is accurate and correct. The other one is principles. So as I said, when you're just starting out, you build a landscape, but if you don't have the time or you've already done that, you can start focusing on principles. So why are they important? Well, they are very important because, they guide your organization while you go along. So even planned or unplanned or makeshift or however you want to run your organization, you can churn out a consistent result because the principle will guide you and make sure that you make a decision that is not too far out of alignment and of things that you want to do and of standardization. It will drive it will be broad strokes in the beginning because you're going to have a handful of principles. But once you start delivering projects on these principles and those projects are successful and you're happy with the result, you turn these into anything standards or reference architecture, so you can start using them and drilling down and creating more enhanced decision making through the granularity that you're getting through those principles. The last one, so once you get to the penultimate, we're going to talk about continuous business transformation. So what does that look like? Continuous transformation is, as I mentioned before, it's all about responding quickly. Responding to how technology changes, because we all know technology changes so rapidly, so quickly. And it's really critical to have a pathway to success. So it's very clear to have a goal, a direction, to actually make sure that you can anticipate and preempt whatever needs to be done in order to support your business, because you have a continuous alignment to what the business is actually trying to achieve. So that's where enterprise architecture is really important. And as the bridge between business and technology, you really need to hone your skills to make sure that you can preempt whatever the business is trying to achieve. So you really need to be in touch with your stakeholders. And as I said, why is digital transformation a continuous process? So it's all about transformation, right? Technology changes so quickly. And in the recent years, we've gone from mobile, we've gone through artificial intelligence, we've gone through cloud computing, we've gone through all these new technologies, and most of these weren't available a decade ago. So that proves that technology continuously changes. So you need to make sure that you're ready for the next disruption, and that if you don't, your organization will probably be left behind. And you're going to get a lot of technical debt, and that's expensive. So how do you shift to continuous business transformation? So according to a study, and numbers are always good, McKinsey & Company, they said 4% of the respondents are fully digitized and 60% have yet to achieve the full level of maturity possible with digital technologies. So it means that we're running behind. So it's really important and really essential that you get on that journey and start focusing on either minimum viable enterprise architecture, building your landscape. So get that organized. Make sure that you have your principles in order, so you can actually start having direction. You can have standards, you can have reference architecture, you're going to have all these practical things that you need in order to get things going. A lot of companies focus on, TOGAF, SACMAN frameworks, which is good, but it requires a whole lot more maturity, because trying to explain something like that to your business stakeholders is really, really difficult. So there's another model called the Gardner model, which is more around practical methodologies. And, that's what I subscribe to myself as well, is I'm very keen on practical solutions. Make sure that you can actually build your enterprise architecture practice, have that alignment with the business, be a credible partner, and help drive your company forward. So here are a whole bunch of tips. Again, these will be available on the website after the session. So just feel to read through at your leisure. I'm not going to go through into too much detail. As I said, we only have 20 minutes. So we get to the conclusion, which is the most important part. So, as I said, when streamlining your EA practices, 3 practical methods are available to drive your maturity from either of the 5 levels that we just discussed. So you can start, with minimum viable enterprise architecture. Start with the basics, build your landscape, build your visibility, start making objective decisions based on data, not on gut feel. Or principle-based decision-making. So focus on making those principles when you are moving quickly, when you have the velocity as an organization, lots of projects in flight, lots of critical deliverables, and you don't have the time to stand still and actually build that landscape really, really quickly. So what you do is you build a set of principles and build those guardrails. That will actually guide your organization into the right direction, make sure that they don't make too many mistakes, and then start honing and building out the granularity of those principles and work towards standards and reference architectures. And then lastly, once you've done all that and you are there and you want to start really aligning yourself to the business and supporting the continuous change, you focus on continuous business transformation as a process. That's where you integrate into your digital strategy, you integrate into your business planning processes, and you make sure that it's all part of the same ecosystem, so we can all support each other, so technology becomes invisible and seamless. That's where we want to be. So how can we do this? So really practically, Citadel Jumpstarts have really helped a lot of clients and customers to build that foundational piece, to get that visibility on the map. And we use LeanIX as the Go starter because it's a fantastic product, because it's so easy to use, it's simple, it doesn't need a lot of user training, and it's absolutely aligned to all the things that we just discussed today. And the secondary, Citadel has an enterprise architecture as a service practice. So that's for actually driving your continuous business transformation and principle-based decision-making. So if you want to learn more about these things, go to our website, check it out. Because these are the things that, can really help drive your maturity. And as I said, we all start at different levels of maturity. We have different needs and therefore need to adapt to methods that work for your organization. So it's about the roadmap. Because you can hire a big four and they will build you a really nice options paper. They'll tell you, you can go for option 1, which will get you here. You're going to go for option 2, but they're not going to tell you how to get there. So it's all about the journey, the travel. How do we get there? Build that maturity and keep the knowledge inside your organization. So, and that's where Citadel and LeanIX shine. That's what we do. Everybody wants to know about examples. So how long is it going to take me to actually do these things? The client maturity journey, it will take a federal government organization 9 months to get from 1.5 to 3, a New South Wales government organization from 2 to 4, about 18 months. A Queensland government organization started from scratch, but they're way ahead of the game now. Some commercial organizations, they started with principle-based decision-making and they are almost at level 5 now. And we have a local utility company, for example, they also started at 1.5, and they're really close to 3, and they did it in a month. So that's a jump start, right? It really jumpstarts your maturity and gets you going. That's it for today. Thank you so much.